Hi everyone, it's B.Chavez. Welcome to the latest TeamEvilGSP live question and answer video. Today's March 29th, 2019. And per the advice of my legal team, I need to mention that anything we speak about today is purely for informational purposes. I do not suggest you break any rules or violate the laws of your land. See a handful of people signed on already. There's Nexus Performance. Anyway, so we're getting everybody lined up. I see Paulie Rocket. I see Hollywood Built. I see Southside Viking. It's absolutely amazing to see you, my friend. That was as good as anything. Any man who will stand there and wait for me to finish my coffee so he can make me another. It's fucking top goddamn shelf in my book. There is Judo Brad has logged on. Quick little story, everyone. I know no one gives a shit, but I'm walking around the damn airport in Los Angeles waiting for my next aeroplane, and I see this just absolutely stunning, athletic black woman, and that made me think in the back of my head, I'm like, you know, my buddy Judo Brad's married to somebody like that. I turn away from, and I was at Starbucks, by the way, and I turned my head, and there's just the bearded Brad right there, and I was like, look at that shit. So how weird is that? I would bump into him, and actually I saw his beautiful wife before him, and so very strange. Anyway, we are, Brad said, just a weird little smile icon. I never know what those little fucking emoji things mean. I think that one might mean fuck you. I'm not sure. But anyway, the Australia trip is done. I am exhausted, but it was amazing and exceptional. I collected a lot of great material, saw a lot of great people, but to be truthful, I am super glad it's behind me. I want to get back to just this. So anyway, this it is. Somebody out there ask a question so we can get started and do what we do here. Must confess, I don't have anything packaged. Let's see here. Should I be cautious using Benadryl during the day? I use it for appetite, but I would be okay to drive to work. Like anything, I mean, literally like anything, there's a bell curve of response. By and large, I mean, it's the classic ingredient of basic cough medicines. By and large, a 25-ish milligram dose is not going to make you nod off like you're on heroin. It may dull your reaction times. It may make you a little drowsy. Actually, there's a large segment of people, kind of alpha people out there that actually use diphenhydramine, Benadryl, for no other person than just to bring them down a little bit. So, yes, it has that effect, but maybe it's a little overstated. But it's a great appetite driver and also really good sleep aid. Take 50 milligrams before bed. You sleep, probably have the best sleep you can get. It even puts me to sleep for an hour. So, it's pretty powerful stuff. Let's see here. Another question. Opinion on eating around HGH injections, push back carbohydrates 60 minutes. No, that's silly. There's a whole lot of science there, a whole lot of material, little shameless promotion. The much fantasized about member section in my website is actually happening. There's material in there now. And one of the pieces of material in there is some words I spoke from Sydney, from the Sydney seminar, on kind of the thumbnail sketch of how growth hormone works. And when you get that thumbnail sketch under your belt and understand the whole idea of, trying to outsmart nature and work your timings and do all these clever things basically becomes irrelevant once you understand what's really going on. Now, there is a kernel of truth in what you're thinking, in that in a natural environment, when insulin is high, growth hormone is typically low because they are counter-regulatory to one another. So if you were relying on your brain to produce said growth hormone, yes, eating carbohydrates could potentially blunt a growth hormone release, on and on and on. Absolutely. But if you're buying it from a bottle, it's fucking in there. There's no chance that you're going to blunt it. Then once you understand the series of events and how it works, and the fact that insulin is one of the major drivers of the conversion to IGF-1, and insulin's a major driver of the elevation in binding proteins that this IGF-1 ultimately lands on, you realize, ooh, maybe carbohydrates are actually fucking good. So, yeah, that's my opinion on that. Let's see. Welcome back from Australia. Thank you, and I have to fucking say, I love Australia, but goddamn am I happy to be home. Oh, let's see here. How do I feel about EC versus Yohimbe versus Clen? Honestly, I'm sure you don't give a fuck how I feel, and truthfully, I don't know how I feel. I don't feel myself regularly. But information on EC versus Clen versus Yohimbine. Yohimbe is valuable as a driver of the effect of other fat loss drugs. Yohimbe basically has the action of elevating the release of fatty acids from their stores into the bloodstream. Then you need some mechanism, be it exercise, growth hormone, something to then burn that fat, give it mitochondrial entry and oxidation. So Yohimbine's a very useful, powerful tool in a calorie deficit, in a scenario where you're trying to burn fat. So I don't really think of it as a versus scenario. I think of it as it's always a valid layer that you can add in to expedite just a little bit more loss of fatty acids. So that's how I would think of that. I don't like these ideas of kind of pitting things against each other, this versus that. That's why we have such a pantheon of things, is we can pick and choose and use and blend and organize as needed to get the best results with the least amount of drugs and the least amount of risk. So start thinking that way, then look at the action of the drug, and then start thinking about clever applications, combinations, and etc. And I think the world will be a little better and people will live a little longer. So, where do I get all my research from? That's a staggering question. If you watch my IGTV videos, I have a giant library of books that I'm sitting in front of, and I literally reread and reread them endlessly, all the time, ranging from, college chemistry textbooks, up to, kind of goofy, 531, workouts. And, I endlessly and voraciously read that material. The biggest part of my, research, if you will, comes from just 30 years of goddamn experience in this business and in the industry. Then aside from that, I have 4 or 5 very good research assistants that look up studies for me, forward them, earmarked and organized, and I read them. But I'm not kind of sifting through the research and doing that shit myself, to be fair. I have some very good people that, find things in the genre I'm looking for and forward them to me in priority. So I'm kind of at a stage now where it's not even really me per se. I'm just the interpreter of the information, and other people are actually finding it for me. That is a relatively new development. 5 years ago, I was the asshole, at the college library, sifting through PubMed and, all the different things. Now the beauty of it is I have people that are willing to do that for me and forward that material to me. So that's, let's see here. Hi, Broderick. What are your thoughts on xenoandrogens? I don't even know what that question means, so I have no thoughts on that. Follow up on Benadryl. Is there strength output reduction? I don't have any clinical data on that, but there is a sedative type effect, so I would suspect that there's a minor down-regulatory effect on the overall nervous system, probably reducing performance. Now, keep in mind, even that sounds scary, but depending on what kind of athlete you are, if you're a track athlete or a powerlifter or a hammer thrower, that's a big fucking deal. But if you're a bodybuilder where the crux of your workout is just the accumulation of volume, I I don't know that being 10% weaker is really the deal breaker. It just means you have to do 2 more reps. So I think the answer to your question is yes, but I think whether or not that question's really that important maybe isn't yes. So I would think a little bit about how that all plays together. Is timing metformin? Nope, stop right there. There's no such thing as timing metformin. It has a relatively long half-life. Take it first thing in the morning or last thing at night. Yes, I have said in the past that, if your dose is very high, spread it out across the day, but it's not because of a timing issue. It's just so you're not chucking 1.5 grams of fucking metformin down your neck at one sitting. It's not a timing issue. Then, by the way, that also means that the metformin ER, the extended release, is a fucking scam. It has no additional benefits over the original product. It was just a cheat, basically a cheat so that they could repatent it and generate a new revenue stream. It's absolutely not necessary. Is Clen really that bad for your heart or not? Some say it's safe, like Dave Palumbo. Well, basically, I'll answer your question, but before that, I'll say this. Whatever Dave Palumbo says is probably wrong. It's probably connected to some fucking commercial gain. So immediately, if he said it, I would immediately step the fuck back and go, wait a minute. That said, most of the really valid research on clenbuterol, at least in supraphysiologic doses, is unfortunately only in the veterinary field, and large animals, farm animals, ruminants, etc., have different. Their heart is designed differently. There's a lot of different things going on. So I'm not really sure how much of that research carries over. In the human clinical research, there's not an awful lot of cardiac impact. But you're talking about physiologic doses, 20 to 40 micrograms once to 3 times a day. That's, and also for relatively truncated durations. Taking 100 micrograms a day for a fucking year might be an entirely different animal. But to the best of my knowledge, there's no real human data out there to give you an answer. In veterinary data, it shows that there is impacts. Cardiomyopathy, stiffening of the ventricle wall, stiffening of the major arteries, there is impacts. Does that carry over to humans? My suspicion is yes, but it's a suspicion. It's not based on any data or research. That's all I can offer you. Yeah. Let's see. How's the coffee in Australia? The coffee in Australia is magnificent. However, everyone and their brother told me, oh my God, if you love the coffee in Sydney, wait till you get to Melbourne. I got to Melbourne. I thought Melbourne was a fucking hipster shithole. It was just nothing but fucking skinny pant assholes with man buns in the fucking way. I did not enjoy Melbourne one goddamn bit. It was hot and annoying and mildly gay. Maybe the coffee was good, maybe it wasn't, but I was so put off by the man bun assholes that I didn't have a goddamn good cup of coffee, or I didn't enjoy a good cup of coffee in Melbourne, and couldn't wait to hit the ground in Sydney. And Sydney is my homeland, and it's fucking wonderful. And literally the coffee in the airport in fucking Sydney is better than most of the goddamn world. So, sorry Melbourne, I love you Australia, and Sydney's got some goddamn sexy coffee. What are your takes on inflammation, toxins, and gut health? I have absolutely no thoughts on gut health. I think gut health is the most overstated, overrated, overconcerned about fucking thing that's ever happened. I have zero. The biggest thing you could do to fucking improve your gut health is basically just stop fucking it up. Stop drinking chlorinated water. Stop taking antibiotics. Stop smearing fucking disinfectant, antibacterial bullshit on your hands. Just stop killing the bacteria. Let your body work it out on its own. I honestly believe that is not a thing you can fix. It's only a thing you can fucking break. So, yeah, I really, really think that's an overstated bunch of shit. What are your thoughts on sub-Q injections versus intramuscular injections for HGH? That's an interesting question. I haven't heard that question in a really long time. When GH first hit the market, literally back in the days when it was still human-derived, when it was extracted from cadavers, back in the late 80s, early 90s, Crestcrom was the brand. There was that was the topic. Sub-Q versus IM versus even IV. And there was tons and tons of work, and Will Brink, Lyle McDonald, some of those really early guys, were Mike Zampano, were in there digging around, rooting around, and basically what they found pretty consistently was it just doesn't fucking matter. Sub-Q is easier, less painful, less problematic, but it does not appear to show any major difference whatsoever. There might be a slightly different timing in terms of the amount of time it takes to disperse fully into the bloodstream. But again, it's nominal and not really a big deal, and it's just a non-issue. Now, having said that, I would fall back on the common dogma that the less times you're piercing the muscle barrier, the less likely you are to have infection, scar tissue, etc. So I would probably err toward sub-Q. But, as far as any research I'm aware of, it doesn't seem to really matter. What do you think of injectable carnitine as a fat loss aid? Nothing. I have no thoughts on it. I got nothing for you. John Perillo was a huge proponent of carnitine, feeding the carnitine shuttle and all that. I just never really got on board with it. I never really did the research, so it might be the fucking golden cow, but I just haven't buried myself in it, so I don't have anything to say. Given that hypercaloric state, T4 to T3 conversion downregulates, what are the practical differences as it pertains to the thyroid while dieting between using Cytomel and T3? I'm not being daft. I don't understand the question. No, I don't understand what you mean. Yes, as you diet, there is a downregulation of T3 to T4. It's usually more a reduction. The liver begins to, it's not a reduction in conversion, it's a reduction in the percentage of conversion between T3 and reverse T3. The actual total volume of T3 produced typically remains about the same. It's just the active versus feedback loop active variety changes. So I'm not really sure what I am not really sure what your question is intended to tease out. So follow that up, or I'm just lost. Let's see. By using Synthroid T4 only and having been on for months prior to dieting and no thyroid drugs. B, A, Cytomel T3. B, using Synthroid T4 and having been on... Again, I'm sorry, but I'm just not following along what you're saying. Maybe I'm just jet lagged and daft, but I don't know what you're getting at. I apologize. Did you teach and coach Greek Spartan? He is a good friend of mine, Andre Verazolis. He's a very good friend of mine, and we do see eye to eye on an awful lot of things. He has mentored with me. I have consulted with him. When I mentioned that I have research assistants that dig up papers and give them to me earmarked and organized and collated, he be one of those gentlemen. He is one of those people. He is a magnificent resource. Anytime he says something, pay the fuck attention. He's super bright dude. So no, I don't quote coach him. Yes, we do communicate a lot, and yes, he's really smart. What are the best uses for boldenone? Kind of an open-ended question. Boldenone is first cousin to testosterone. So basically anything testosterone does, it could do. The only caveat in that regard is it's 20 or 30% more anabolic. That's usually good. And it converts to estrogen at about 50% of the rate. Also DHT at about 50% of the rate. So if you wanted to replace your testosterone completely, you would actually need twice as much boldenone. So a 200 milligram TRT testosterone dose would become a 400 milligram boldenone dose, no testosterone. So it certainly can do all of that. And then the biggest application, for instance, were I going to design a drug cycle, boldenone brings notoriously lots of blood volume, hematocrit, hemoglobin, red blood cell count, etc. Those values tend to be have pressure on them when training is very high, or if you were even some sort of an athlete that's doing cardiovascular work, soccer players, rugby players, lots and lots of movement, volume, cardiovascular input, MMA, probably MMA. So basically I would use it either as a replacement for the testosterone or as a supplement to mainly to drive that VO2 capacity, work capacity kind of component. Magnificent drug for that purpose. Been used in sports for 60 years for that very reason. Okay, here's a thing here. It's a little compliment. Been watching your thing, love it. Question regarding reading for those considering starting PEDs. Again, shameless promotion, but it is the honest answer to what you need. On my Instagram page, I don't know the nomenclature, there's the little story thing, and then there's the little buttons for the, archived stories. I don't know what the fuck they're called, but the little round icons along the bottom. One of those is titled Research, and if you click on it, you will see some of the highlights from my personal library, and I did that rather intentionally, that those are all things I think if you're going to risk your life, your legality, and your money, those are things you should be reading. So just start scrolling through there, and pretty much anything on that list is a great place to start. But if you absolutely have nothing and you want to buy one piece of literature, it's going to help you the most. Bill Llewellyn's Anabolics, literally any, I think there's 22 editions now, literally any of them. My personal favorite is the 2005 edition. It's the same information. There's no magic. I just like the way it's put together. It's laid out a little bit more like a college textbook, which is very familiar and comfortable to me. So I love my hardback 2005 edition. But the newer ones have some values too, and I do have them. But when I'm referencing just basic information, I crack open the 2005 edition. You said that some people are sensitive to certain nandrolone metabolites, especially at high doses. What kind of side effects does this sensitivity have? Lethargy? No. Well, I mean, maybe. That was certainly not one I was referencing, but the minute you say no, you're fucking wrong. The body can do, there's enough people out there that any goddamn thing can crop up eventually. But no, really what I was referencing is nandrolone is I'm going to make up a word here, a promiscuous molecule. It has a lot of competitive antagonism to the progesterone and prolactin receptor and possibly other neurological receptors in other tissues. And so at high doses, some of these, you get an extra exaggerated buildup of some of these downstream metabolites, and they can wreak havoc on tissues that they're not intended to. I've heard headaches. I've actually heard of even hallucinations brought on by high levels of trenbolone metabolites. Probably all in tier with that behavioral modification that trenbolone has, but auditory and visual hallucinations, migraine headaches. Random and inexplicable skin rashes, just not driven by prostate, but incontinence and the inability to pee is actually one that crops up rather a lot. It's actually in the literature. So, there's a ton of things there, and it's just one of the many, many fucking many reasons why I don't love 19 Nors as a rule. But as far as the lethargy, usually when you equate high dosage and lethargy, it's usually actually as simple as a calorie equation. High doses drive radical growth. Growth is a really energy-intensive process. It's the reason why children sleep all the time. It's the reason why pro bodybuilders are not out doing landscaping or what have you. They need to conserve all of their energy for no other purpose than anabolism. So usually when you're equating high dosages and lethargy, it just balls out. High dosages take a ton of energy, and lethargy is a great way for your body to conserve energy, or at least reallocate energy. So that's probably what's going on there. Iron Warrior thinks it's was that it? No, it was somebody else. Thinks it's funny I picked on Dave Palumbo. Well, it's easy to pick on Dave Palumbo. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. Oh, I'm so fucking daft. I didn't understand the wording. Xenoestrogen apparently is referring to unintended, environmentally induced exogenous estrogen-like metabolites, plastics, PET, some of this stuff does have flavone and estrogen-like molecules. What are my thoughts on that? My thoughts on that are it's real. It's a minor problem, really. And quite honestly, as soon as people love to make conspiracies out of fucking everything. This is probably not a conspiracy, but probably a legitimate oversight that snuck into the problem. The petroleum chemists, the petroleum engineers that created these plastics probably didn't have, deep insight into some of the potential downstream biological influences. They made great plastics, but unfortunately they had downstream problems. Now that those problems are identified, the petroleum engineers are going back, reworking the design of the plastics, and those problems are going away pretty quickly. Were they real? Are they real? Yeah, but I don't think it was the turning point on anybody's athletic career. I really don't believe that anybody got fucking man boobs from drinking water out of a plastic bottle. There are a couple of wacky insecticides that do drive estrogen, but quite honestly, everybody and their fucking brother loves to smoke pot like a goddamn chimney. THC is more pro-estrogenic than all the plastic in the universe you'll ever be exposed to. So it's a real thing, but I think it's really an easy, catchy, clever, feel-good target that's really not relevant or important, and there's probably a lot of more valid places people could put their concerns. When we first introduce AAS, is it better to start with lower dosage, closer to TRT? After what period stops that dosage becomes TRT? By the way, this guy, Joven, is the incredibly good and fine human being who is putting all the timestamps on all of these question and answer videos. So every one of you out there that's watching this, that enjoys these question and answers and goes back to YouTube and watches them, that really, really handy just click of a button, jump to the proper place in the video, 100% wholly because of that human being, because I lack the time, interest, and motivation and skill to fucking do that. So every time you click on one of those cool little blue hot links, think of this guy because he's the one who's doing it. So to your question, I'm not really going to address the TRT part, although it's in the answer I'm going to give you. The answer is you should always start at the lowest effective dose and escalate from there. The analogy I use, and I'm not sure it's the greatest analogy because I have to keep fucking repeating it, so maybe I need to rework my language, but the analogy I use is think of your dosing as pushing the button for the elevator. If you're too weak and too pathetic and you can't push the button in for the elevator, fucking no elevator's going to come. But if you can manage to get the button to connect, elevator's going to come. You get no extra points for pushing the fuck out of that button. It's buttons pushed or buttons not. Now, for the analogy of muscle growth and drug use, you have to kind of go on the ride and assume every time you need to push the button, it requires a little more pressure than the time before. So with that thinking, it makes sense, since there's no benefit, you're not going to get more elevator if you push the hell out of the button. The goal is just push the button, signaling, something you hear out of me all the time, biological signaling. You're giving the anabolic signal, you're allowing it to play out, and then next time you're applying just a little bit more signal, making reception, allowing it to play out, and so on and so on and so on. So no matter what the scenario of drug use is, the idea should always be at the lowest possible threshold to push the button and leave yourself the maximal room to escalate. By the way, somebody yesterday via text message was fucking haranguing me about front loading. Pay attention what I just said. That's the whole reason. That's a portion of the reason why front loading is fucking stupid. You're just taking a bunch of drug to get the same amount of result you would get from a little bit of drug. It's fucking dumb. Then on top of it, if you actually look at how half-lives work and the actual decay over time and the distribution within the lymph, and you actually look at the real pharmacokinetics, it doesn't fucking work anyway. But even if it did, it would still be stupid because it's a stupid fucking idea. So stop that. Anyway, fuck. Let's see here. Something about tocopherols behaving like androgens. Yeah, whatever. Is there a point on using HGH secretagogues instead of the actual thing besides cost? Legality is a big access, and legality is probably the major mover in that equation, although there's been some changes in the technology available to manufacturers, and the cost of GH is plummeting worldwide. Even underground cheap Chinese GH was $400, 100 IUs, and now it's half that or less. So the biggest issue is probably just access, legality, and that douchebaggery, quasi-natural, I'm not taking an illegal drug, so I'm not taking a drug. Like all the natural assholes that are whacking back 1,000 milligrams of metformin and getting a genuine sports performance benefit, but they're still natural. Fuck off. It's just all shades of gray, and I have no interest in arguing the semantics, but to give you something other than just criticism, I actually can think of a reason why a secretagogue, ipamorelin, for instance, a couple of others, might actually have real benefit. Something that I love to criticize is PCT. And I do think, by and large, it's overplayed, overstated, etc. However, in a scenario where you are using GH in relatively significant dosings for relatively significant periods of time, you will begin to produce less and less of it via your pituitary gland. And it might make sense at the end of a course of actual GH to transition over to a secretagogue for no other reason than to help stimulate your pituitary to manufacture more and ensure that the machinery is at peak efficiency. So I actually could see secretagogues being a peptide PCT that I could actually get behind and half-assed endorse. I think the sex hormone vector is wildly overplayed and poorly understood, but the GH thing, actually, I think it might have some validity. So, let's see. Your opinion on using T4 for faster fat loss. Is it safer choice than T3? Well, safe is a really bad word. No drug is safe, and no unprescribed, sports performance type drugs are truly safe. However, T4 is a much better choice simply because then your body can handle the conversion, and your body will handle the conversions according to what it thinks, and it's usually smarter than you, or at least more up to the moment knowledgeable than you. It then determines the amount of T3, reverse T3 antibodies, etc. produced from it, plus T4 has a relatively long half-life, so you can get more even background plasma levels. In general, I think T4 is a much better choice, and only move to T3 deep into a diet when there's true downregulation and your liver is not playing along with the conversion side of things. So yes, that is what I think on that. Let's see here. Most accurate take on Melbourne I've ever heard. I'm being a little fucking mean, but yeah, I didn't love it nearly as much as I wanted to or I thought I would. And Sydney is still my home. I fucking love Sydney. It's just a great goddamn town. Just the nicest combination of just blue collar, white collar immigrants, a lot of Asians. Like just fuck. I just like Sydney. It's good. You go in a place and a menu has like all the stuff I like because it needs to meet all the demographics, and it's just, other than their itty bitty fucking food portions, they eat like fucking birds. I don't know how anybody in that country has any muscle, but that aside, I love Sydney, and the coffee's so fucking good. Just everybody everywhere. You could just stop at a fucking gas station and get amazing coffee. A perfect example, Southside Viking, friend of mine, owns an exceptional powerlifting gym, but the key word is powerlifting gym. Would you expect to get a world-class goddamn cup of coffee at a powerlifting gym? No, you would not. That man just stood right behind a counter and made me a fucking cup of coffee, and it was good. And then on top of that, he stood there and waited till I finished it so he could make me a second. So 1, damn good human being. 2, goddamn good cup of coffee. 3, the most surprising place to get a goddamn good cup of coffee. So Sydney's way up in the stratosphere of fucking coffee. They're kicking the rest of the world's ass. Norway's not far behind you, but they are behind you. So anyway. For bodybuilders, do you find modulation of estradiol, aldosterone, and sodium to be an effective means of reducing extracellular fluid and looking leaner? Well, I wouldn't use the word leaner. I think a trained eye knows the difference between water retention and fat retention. So I wouldn't say looking leaner, but I would say crisping up or improving dryness and hardness in the final approach to a contest. Yes, but there's the fucking key. In the final window approaching a contest can often turn into just fucking all the time because I like looking that way, and that's where the problems come in. If you're truly saving that approach for the final 4 weeks, 2 weeks, I'm in love with that idea. I have pretty solid standard protocols for doing that. People that are doing it year round, I think that's fucking dumb. So, yes. Oh, I fucking went crazy there. How long is it reasonable to use EPO given the proper blood work is done? Bad question. I don't think it's a matter of, how long is reasonable. I think, what is your goal? Is your goal reasonable? You should be using it for an event, for a purpose, to meet a specific target, within a time frame. So if you have a reasonable target and then you apply the drug accordingly to meet the target, everything's tits. You're just taking EPO, just kind of like, I'm just taking this because it's a drug and it's fucking funny. That's really dumb and a bad idea. So I can get behind the idea of using it, but it would be for a purpose, for a target, if you're just trying to randomly just raise your background hematocrit, like Boldenone's anabolic and way easier to get and way less hard to kill yourself with. So, depending on what exact question you're asking, I don't know, but my general attitude would be, if you're using EPO, you should have some very finite line in the sand dates that you're trying to achieve, and that should determine the drug use, not the other way around. Let's see here. What is my take on CBD? That's a long, complicated story that I don't know if this is the right place for it, but those of you that know me know I have fucking horrible chronic pain from a catastrophic accident. My feet are completely reconstructed. And I'm always on the lookout for something that might help me with pain because I respond very, very unfavorably to opioids. I have a personal problem with potheads and the douchebag hemp patchouli smeared fucking man bun faggots that typically in my era were the potheads. That's kind of changing in modern times, so I gotta loosen up on that. And I know that. But in general, I have a real problem with the potheads. And so I had a real resistance to trying the CBD. I finally got to the point where I was just like, I'll fucking try anything. My wife purchased some for me, and it did, in fact, reduce the pain in my feet and actually in my shoulders, too, which I didn't even really know were that bad, but I noticed it after the pain went away. So it absolutely improved my pain. However, if you read the fine print in the research literature, which almost nobody does, certainly no potheads do, one of the things that cannabinoids can do is reduce peristalsis like opioids. And so my intestines stopped working. I wound up with a life-threatening intestinal blockage, and I sincerely believe it tracks directly back to the CBD. So great for pain, bad for shitting, almost killed me. I guess I'm going to have to live with foot pain because apparently shitting is more important than walking. Just saying. And I had to go through that the hard way. It's not like I, worked that out, on paper. So, let's see. Somebody telling me that they have to leave. Wish they could watch all the way through. Keep up the good work. Thank you. And I appreciate every single fucking person that takes the time to log on here and listen to me fucking ramble. I'm surprised and amazed at it every time. So thank you. What particular androgens or other drugs have a particularly pronounced effect on mental health? Unfortunately, literally every one of them can. Sex hormones at large. And even, you said androgens, quite honestly, even estrogens. Think all men think women go crazy once a month. I don't know that they go crazy, but they are emotionally skewed by hormone levels, and that ranges from, testosterone, DHT, metabolites, and then the other direction, E1, E2, and metabolites. So literally, there is no sex hormone that doesn't have at least the potential to cause, cognitive dysfunction, emotional dysfunction, 100%. I wish that were not the case, but it is. What I would say, and this sounds maybe a little bit self-serving because I'm kind of notoriously the prima ballin guy, but I would say that, and this is the analogy I use when I kind of do my live talks, if you know nothing about cars and somebody lined up a series of automobiles, even if you have no knowledge of cars, like I do not, you could still pretty much go, that one's older than that one, this one's newer than that one. You can roughly put them in chronological order based on the appearance of the technology. The same thing applies to anabolics, and if you put anabolics in chronological order, interestingly, they get more and more sophisticated and less problematic. Probably not a surprise that Primobolan was one of the later iterations, and because of that, it had solved more of the technical problems associated with the early drugs. So if you were looking for something with probably the least potential for impact, that's where I would shop, kind of a Masteron Primobolan scenario, and move away from the 19-nor and, testosterone and, Dianabol and Anadrol, and move more toward the sophisticated later technology type scenarios. So, did you finish reading the book about PEDs in weightlifting you posted a while ago? Yeah, I finished in like a day and a half. Not a particularly sophisticated book. Absolutely. A decent book, nothing, not amazing. The research in it was reasonable. The premises were reasonable, if not that douchey, elitist, weightlifting kind of attitude. I find those people a bit tedious, but good book. Certainly worth the $10, $12 it was to buy it. Can't go wrong. Yeah, give you some insight. Absolutely. Do women need to take PCT coming off a cycle? No. In fact, PCT type drugs would be very problematic to females and also to female fertility. So no, women have it very easy. I mean, outside of the whole, growing a mustache, beard, and penis, they do not have any need for PCT. So no. How would you take insulin metformin? I'm not going to answer a question as specific as that. But I mean, you should be able to work through that pretty straightforward. As I mentioned earlier, metformin's just kind of a once a day, twice a day if you're taking a very big dose. Remember that metformin raises your insulin sensitivity, therefore theoretically lowers your need for overall insulin. And, based on your body weight, age, sex, total carbohydrate intake, you would pick a insulin dose and go forth from there. Have you seen Boris Chico's book with Mike Israetel? Any thoughts, comments come to mind? Actually, no. I'm embarrassed to say I have not had the time. I believe Mike even forwarded me a copy of it. I believe I own it. And no, I have not yet had a chance to read it. No, I have not. And my immediate, just kind of cavalier off the cuff thoughts are, I find Boris Chico really fucking boring. It's just the same fucking do a ass pile of volume at the highest possible intensity. Squat. I find his shit a little tedious. Not ineffective, not wrong, but just a little tedious. And we don't need another book. Like we fucking get it. Squat a lot. We fucking get it. So yeah, that's kind of why it's moved to the back of my must-read list, is because unless it's something completely unexpected, it's just going to be fucking squat a lot in, the 80+% range. And there you go. Let's see here. Back to the insulin and metformin. Would I take it when I was looking to put on muscle? Of course. And even people that don't take insulin and metformin, when they're trying to gain weight, what do? They raise their calories. What does that do? That raises the release of insulin. So even the fucking natural assholes that are fucking chronically overeating, they're still taking insulin, or at least exposing themselves to insulin. Insulin is an integral and unavoidable aspect of growth. So, yeah. The whole fast-acting, slow-acting, a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of art. I've seen people be very successful with both ends of the spectrum. As far as the around-the-workout timing it thing, that is not my particular way of doing things. Some very famous names in the business do that. They seemingly get good results. I don't like things that are that time and effort intensive. My theme always across the board is longer, lower, slower. Do it, in the background, longer, lower, slower. It'll get the job done eventually. You got less opportunity to fuck it up. Less opportunity if things go sideways. I especially believe that about insulin use, but I basically believe that about everything. Choosing calories, setting your macros, pretty much everything. Longer, lower, slower. Maybe not the best today, but it's the best overall. What is the mechanism growth hormone causes lethargy? Growth is expensive. Growth is energy intensive. Energy intensive. Say that over and over. Growth is energy intensive. So I got to eat extra calories to grow. Okay, so if you're condensing that all into one little area around a bolus of growth hormone, guess what happens? All the energy that could be going to other shit, go fucking growth. You're tired. Why is that a mystery? Son of a bitch. I'm sorry I'm yelling at you, but I get asked that question all the time, and I just can't believe that that's a fucking question in people's fucking heads. Yeah, fuck. Fuck. Check the time, just because that gives me pause to want to know what time it is. Fucking, all right, fuck, 5 or 10 minutes more of this shit. Thoughts on THC in regards to recovery and performance? Well, I kind of mentioned that in an earlier remark. I personally have a real problem with the pothead people of my generation, kind of the new generation seems to be a little less douchebaggery. But personally, I have had a very standoffish attitude toward THC. I have looked at the chemistry. I understand cannabinoids. I understand a lot of the underlying chemistry. And quite honestly, really good drug. Great at driving appetite. Great at reducing overall stressors. It is a great depressant. So I don't think that it is completely out of place and used properly in that concept. I personally do not, probably never will, especially with the CBD train wreck that took place in my fucking colon. I'm probably going to avoid it for life, but I have no real problem and maybe even could endorse the idea of using it in that regard. Yeah. So, yeah. Let's see what else we got here. How to combat high cholesterol on a cycle. Omega, niacin, garlic, oil, red yeast. All of that, and the one you didn't fucking mention, do some goddamn cardio. Nobody wants to hear that shit. Nobody wants to do that, but that is the answer. Cardio will probably improve your overall blood lipid profile more than all of that shit combined. So now if you were, clever enough to do both of them, you might be in some sort of zone. So, just reason 1267 why anyone that's taking anabolics needs to be doing some goddamn cardio. But yes, all of that plus. And out of those, honestly, the slow niacin and the garlic are really the movers. The others, I'm a little less convinced. Niacin is literally prescribed as a prescription drug in most of the African continent. Niacin is an excellent tool at modulating blood lipids. Garlic, specifically aged garlic, does seem to show up pretty consistently as having some benefit. The rest of that stuff I'm not really sold on. I think omega fatty acids are pretty overstated, and the red yeast I'm not super fluent, but I'm a little skeptical. But niacin and garlic and cardio would be where I would go with that. Why do you think weightlifters don't use safety squat bars? Seems like a fucking great tool. That's a fucking, I'm glad you say that, because that you're clever and you're thinking, and that's fucking awesome. And it just, again, shows to me the fucking douchebaggery of Olympic lifters. They're fucking whiny twats. I don't like them. And then on top of that, they bleed into the CrossFit world, and it's just like two faggots docking. I just hate them. But the Olympic hopeful, the U.S. Olympic hopeful, the great big fat swine of a woman. She's a great lifter, but she's just hideously obese. Can't think of her name. She hurt her shoulder, was unable to high bar squat. They bought her a safety squat bar. And lo and behold, her squatting got better. While her shoulder was injured, her squatting got better. And then after her shoulder recovered, her clean and jerk and her snatch went up because her fucking legs and hips were stronger. Safety squat bar saves the day. So it's a real thing, and it's just, everybody has their blind spot, but Olympic lifters are a giant blind spot. But good thinking, and you're right, and don't assume that you're wrong because they're not doing it. Just assume they're fucking stupid. I visited Melbourne a few times. Coffee is really good if you know where to look. And the only the Central Business District is flowery. That may well be. I don't disbelieve you, but unfortunately, every bit that I found was a train wreck. And also keep in mind, I'm fucking tense, and I was there for the Arnold, and I was busy, and a lot of stress, and I maybe had less humor than normal, but in general, didn't love Melbourne, wasn't my jam. As soon as I got to Sydney, it was just, Sydney, I like you. And I do, and I did, and it's fucking cool. Injectable ATP. Nope, total waste of your time. Eat carbohydrates. Besides coffee, proper carb, kcal intake, what would you suggest for mental focus to aid learning? Well, Once again, not the area that I have spent a lot of time with. I don't want to say this because I'm going to sound like a complete cock, but intellect and learning has never really been my weakness, so it's not something that I've really gotten excited about and dug into. Speed and strength and performance and recovery, those were the things I was always looking to augment. So I never really sunk my teeth into that area, but I have some good friends who do, and they tend to rely on things like modafinil and Celank, the peptide. So that's where I would look, but in general, it's just not my shit. I would much rather raise my bench press than my IQ. Sorry, but that is my answer. I'm not going to lie to you and make shit up. I'm just going to tell you pretty much the way I feel it is. How to combat high cholesterol. Go back and listen to 15 minutes ago because we covered that. Have I ever used Trenbolone? Yes, it was an absolute total fucking disaster. I'm well and truly lucky I didn't actually commit murders. It's the only time in my life and the only time in the 21 years that I've been married where my wife literally told me, stop what you are doing or I will gather my shit and leave. So, yeah, Trenbolone and I are absolutely incompatible. Around New Year, you said you were thinking about doing one more Q&A during the week. Is that still in play? I think that it is. I'm actually leaning momentarily toward the idea of dumbing this down to a half an hour and doing one earlier in the week at a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then one now, half an hour, 45 minutes. And by the way, this is a perfect segue. You helped me wonderfully. Perfect segue to remind everybody that 1 week from now, I'll be doing this. It's Friday here, Saturday in Australia. 24 hours after that, I will be on the line with Will Crozier of Nexus Performance at WCROZ. So I will be on a split screen live Instagram excitement with him a week and a day from now. And so there's going to be some bonus material there. So if you have the opportunity, tune into that. Will's a great guy. Nexus do great work and awesome people to support. And I'll be there. So if you like the shit I have to say, it's an opportunity to get more of the shit I say. In your opinion, what's going on with the John Jones? You know what? I had to answer that 15 times in Australia. People asked me that a bunch of fucking times at the Arnold. People were just randomly asking me that. The possibility that is happening naturally, obviously not natural because he took an exogenous drug, but the chances that that's actually a quirk of the chemistry and it's hiding in adipose tissue and cropping up is not zero, but it's so fucking close to zero you can ignore it. He's taking a fucking drug. That metabolite has a very distinct lifetime. It's generated in a very specific order and pattern and then decays in a very specific timeline. The chances that it's arbitrarily doing something different is so goddamn unbelievably small. And anyone who knows anything about fucking chemistry knows that, including the assholes at WADA that are trying to come up with excuses as to why he's, not guilty. It's bullshit. With that, the timer is ticking, telling me that I have 20 seconds to wrap this up. So I absolutely very much want to thank each and every one of you. I appreciate you a lot. Were it not for you, I'd be fucking talking to myself, which is what I'll do in the next 2 minutes when I turn this off. So until next time, stay strong. I'll see you in a week.